In 1904, if the morning snow fell white, it meant the textile mill was on strike. Most days, it fell straight up grey, choked out by the thick, oily factory smog before it even hit the cobblestones. My name is Mark, and by the time I was 10, I already knew that this town ran on two things: coal dust and the factory whistle. My dad was a giant of a man, dead silent, with arms scarred to the elbows from the foundry. My ma washed other people's clothes until her fingers were raw and split. We lived in a damp basement that always smelled like wet wool and cheap cabbage. Then, one freezing November morning, everything shattered. A neighbor burst through our door, panting, staring at the floor. A ladle had burst at the foundry. Molten iron. My dad didn't stand a chance. He barely had time to shove his partner out of the way. When Ma heard the news, something inside her just snapped, already coughing blood from the consumption. She took to her bed and never got back up. 3 days later, her coughing stopped for good. I'll never forget the sound of those two cheap pine coffins being nailed shut. The neighbors helped, sure, but nobody came to the cemetery. Missing a shift meant getting fired on the spot. By evening, the landlord kicked me out onto the street, locking the door behind me. As payment for the overdue rent, he snatched the only thing my dad left behind, an old, silver pocket watch with a busted spring. Winter in the slums doesn't care if you're a kid. You either keep moving, or you freeze. You fight, or you starve. I landed a gig at the brickyard. They loved hiring kids because our small hands were perfect for flipping the wet, heavy clay bricks. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. My hands became so cracked and caked with red clay that no matter how hard I scrubbed, it wouldn't come off. I made pennies, just enough for a mug of weak tea and a stale crust of oat bread. Move it, you little rat. The overseer would yell, swinging a leather strap across my shoulders. He smelled like cheap whiskey and mean intentions. Hurry up, or I'll throw you past the gates. There's 100 more freezing outside who want your spot. I didn't cry. Tears just froze on your cheeks and bit your skin like needles anyway. I learned to look down, swallow the anger, and grit my teeth until my jaw ached. At night, I'd curl up against the back wall of a bakery, using old newspapers as blankets, trying to steal a little leftover heat from the bricks. What kept me alive wasn't luck. It was pure, stubborn spite. I looked at the wealthy folks rolling past in their fancy carriages, holding perfumed handkerchiefs to their noses, and a cold, hard knot formed in my chest. I wasn't going to let this city bury me. The turning point came when I was 12. The brickyard went under, and I was hustling on the streets, shining shoes, hawking morning papers, whatever it took. One miserable, rainy evening, I was shivering on the back steps of a printing shop. Right next to me on the wet bench was a stack of discarded, misprinted pages from a mechanical journal. I couldn't read a single word, but I couldn't take my eyes off the drawings. Detailed schematics of steam engines, gears, and pistons. To me, it looked like a secret map to a completely different life. The heavy door creaked open, and an old man stepped out. He wore thick glasses and an apron stained black with ink. It was Thomas, the master printer. Interested in the machines, kiddo? He asked, his voice raspy but quiet. They're beautiful, I mumbled, pulling my legs in, expecting him to kick me off the stoop. But I don't know the letters. What do they say? That's power right there, son. That's what drives the world, Thomas said, sitting right down on the damp wood next to me. Tell you what, I need a shop boy to mix ink and clean the type. It's hard work and lousy pay, but I'll give you a roof, a hot bowl of soup, and I'll teach you how to read. I looked up at him, and it felt like someone finally flipped a switch in the dark. I stood up, squared my shoulders, and looked him in the eye. Deal, I said. I'll work. I'm getting out of this dirt. Those years at the print shop became my battlefield. By day, I scrubbed the heavy rollers until my arms numbly throbbed, breathing in ink fumes and lead dust. But the nights belonged to me. Old Thomas kept his word. By the flickering light of a candle stub, while the rest of the city slept, he taught me to read and cipher. I ran through the basic primers in weeks. Soon, I was devouring textbooks on physics, math, and engineering that Thomas begged and borrowed from local students. It was brutal. My eyes burned from the dim light, and my head pounded from working 14-hour days. When I turned 18, Thomas got sick and passed away. The shop was seized for debts, and the new owner tried to treat me like a slave, slashing my pay. But I wasn't that helpless orphan anymore. My character had been forged in the fire. People double-crossed me, partners tried to rob me, and I got laid off more times than I can count. But I kept pushing. I got a job as a stoker on the railroad, studied by the light of the firebox, took exams externally, and fixed complex machinery for pennies just to get my hands on the tech. I fell asleep with blueprints in my hands and woke up to the whistling winter wind, knowing every single day was a step closer. 20 years later. It's 1924. Right. Across the street from the ruins of the old brickyard where I used to break my back, there's a massive, modern red brick building with huge, clean windows. The brass plaque by the door reads, Mark Orloff Engineering. I'm standing by the window of my office on the second floor. I'm 30 now, wearing a sharp wool suit, but my hands, broad and heavy, are still covered in the faint scars of old burns, and factory grease still clings to my knuckles. I just signed a massive contract to supply my own patented steam turbines to the city's power grid. Outside, the snow is coming down thick, but today, the snow is white, blindingly, beautifully white. There is no black smog choking the air anymore, because the industrial filters my company designed and now legally mandated across the entire district. I reach into my vest pocket and pull out an old, scratched silver pocket watch. My dad's watch. It took me years to track down the landlord who stole it, and I paid 100 times what it was worth to get it back. I rebuilt the movement myself. Now, it ticks perfectly, steady and strong. I think back to that freezing 10-year-old kid starving on the cobblestones. This world tried to grind me down into dust, to chew me up in its gears and spit me out. But it lost. I look at my reflection in the glass and smile. I didn't just survive, and I didn't let the bitterness consume me. My company now funds 3 orphanages and a free night school for Laboris. I kept my humanity. I took the broken pieces of my life, wound them back up, and finally became the master of my own time. If you like this story, please subscribe. More stories are coming soon.